Mexican American, first generation. I did want to touch on just education and how you were talked about it, like at home, what your parents or your dad, what his mindset was, and then just work ethic, because I think there's like a running joke, like Mexicans work hard and like never doubt like a Mexican's work ethic. And although that's really funny, I do think that in our culture we are taught to work extremely hard, but not necessarily to work smart.
Yeah. And I guess you have a point on that, because when we look at it, what are the jobs that Mexicans do? And it's a lot of backbreaking, which is mostly
labor.
The agricultural labor. So so my dad did not make us, but he took us to work in the fields when I was like 12 years old and my brother was 14 years old. So since the age of 12, we were out in the fields, cooking the onions, and we did onions and watermelon that season. And so I worked in the field since I was probably like 12 up until the last year that I worked in the field was when I was like 26.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So, and honestly, he never really, actually, he kind of did care about education a little bit. So like if we would miss or whatever, like if we were like grade school, which was like a lot, he would be upset, but he really didn't really have like a bad view on education, or a good view on it. It was just whatever you want to do, because whenever I told him that I was going to go to college, like he wasn't like, oh well, is that going to lead to a better job? Or like he wasn't like going against me. Like he was like, oh well, if that's what you want to do, because I feel like he really didn't know what it was that I was going to do.
Yeah.
So I feel like for him it was like, go for it, just do whatever you want to do. He didn't really have a view on school, but it was just whatever you wanted to do, because he actually he helped me go to UNN and go to Albuquerque. That's where I went to school. But it wasn't directly through him. It was just him being there, being supportive. But like everything else, I kind of had to do it on my own. Yeah. And I feel like that's the barrier that we face, like because he didn't know how to apply financial aid. My other cousin was actually the one that kind of helped me through the whole college experience, and also another thing that helped me out in college was the College Assistant Migrant Program, which is camp. And I don't know if you heard about it here in NMSU.
I've not heard about it.
They have it here in NMSU and they have it in Albuquerque. And they basically help out farm workers, students that just graduated high school. So if your parent or you has worked in agricultural stuff, they'll help you out in school. They'll pay you. They'll help pay the first year of college. They help you with like your dormitory, your rooms, or like figure out your living situation. And they also like help pay for the food. So that kind of like was a guide for me in college. It wasn't like my dad, because he didn't know a dang thing. So I had to rely really on that program to help me learn the college way, like getting starting your own bank account, and all that stuff, and renting a house, so it was like a lot of first times for me doing a lot of things, like leaving Danny, oh, I'm not close to my family anymore. It's gonna be me, like you said, the survival instincts. So like I think that's when it kicked in for me, was like trying to do things right. Figuring it out on my own.
Wow, that is so much to unpack. I think both of us have had a different, what would you say, upbringing, because for me it was just expected. Like I had to go to college, like regardless, like I was expected. They did not necessarily put the degree out for me, but it was expected. Like I was gonna go to college. And that was hard because my dad did graduate college, but he did that in Mexico. And then coming here, it's like you're on your own, figure it out. And I was like, okay. And
so you're going to college?
Yeah. And then my mom, she barely even finished high school. And so I have two different mindsets where one of them was like, do whatever you want. Like, you're done with high school, that's good enough. And my dad being like, no, you gotta go to college. And really the big driver was like, we don't want you to work as hard as we do. And we want you to have an easier life. And we want you to go to college. We want you to get your degree. And I did, but I just don't think that they ever let me explore different things. It was like college was the only way, and college was going to get you a degree, and the degree was going to pay more money, and more money meant working less, and working less meant job security and like happiness. But I don't think it was encouraged. Like, well, what do you want to do? Like, are you interested in finance? Are you interested in business? Like, what would you, it's like go to school. Like that was the goal. And then I got done, and I was like, well, I did it, but I'm not happy, and I'm not actually making any much more or less money than I was without my degree.
So yours was a little bit different than mine because your parents' education level was a little bit higher than both of my parents. My mom only graduated high school, so that's a little bit different for me. And then your parents are together, so they've been married for
they've been married for like almost 26 years.
And that itself is another difference that we have because I was only raised almost by my dad. You know?
Yeah.
Not saying that my mom wasn't around, but we were mostly living with my dad, and I think it's a little bit different, like with a single parent household than it is with two parents.
Okay.
Because then, like you said, they were kind of a little bit more involved in your life, but for us it was kind of like he was mostly working in order for us to like get by. So like we basically had to like raise ourselves, and that's why I feel like I had a little bit more freedom growing up because I didn't really have like you have to do this, you have to do that. Like it was like this is like just showing us like different things, and then just like us deciding on whether like the field I could have honestly just worked there for the rest of my life and people would have never like been upset about it or anything like that. It's just like you chose to do that, so that's what you get to do. So it wasn't really like you have to do this. Like I'm paving you a road and you have to take that road. It was mostly of me, just experiencing,
making your choices.
Making my choices and doing whatever I wanted to do. So that's a little bit different from us, and honestly, it's funny because we come from the same background, but it's like totally different experiences, because we're both Mexican American, but like there's so much differences in that and the way that we were growing up as well.
So I'll open up a little bit about my own Mexican American experience and go ahead and ask questions if you'd like. But I did grow up in Mexico, and there were times where my parents either lived here and I lived over there alone with like my aunts or my grandparents, or there were times where they would move me here and I lived here with them, and then they'd move me back, like depending on like what we were doing. And then at the age of 9, we did settle down and we did live here as a family, like as a whole. And it was weird because I was like, I have my mom, my dad, and my brother in the same room at the same time, and we're living together. And I remember like the awareness of the moment to be like, are you guys like sending me back? Am I staying here? And then just always kind of hearing like, we did this for you, like you have to be successful. And I'm like okay.
So it was expected of you.
Yeah, and it's like we did not sacrifice or we did not come to this country so that you could like.
So you lived like the hard Mexican.
There's a hard.
Yeah, I feel like that one's it. I feel like because for me, mine was just like just do whatever you want, and if it works out, then it does. Like nothing was really expected.
There was no expectation.
Yeah, like as far as I'm right now, like that's like probably like the best I've ever done. Like no one was expecting me to do that. It's just like you do it, go ahead, but it wasn't really like expected. So it's like, oh, well, he's getting that part, cool. Like good for you. It's not really like, oh, you had to do it. It was like, it was like go ahead and just do whatever you wanted. So that's a little bit rough on for your son. I could never imagine you being in a life like that.
I think sometimes it's hard too because you are coming from Mexico and you're moving to the U.S. and you like I am American, like I was born here, and so you like okay, like I'm American, but you don't relate to Americans, and then you relate to like the Mexican Americans that are here, but they have like a completely different way of thinking, and so you're like, oh, it's just hard because sometimes you don't feel like you fit in.
So I have a question for you. Did your cousins make fun of you every time you would go to Mexico and you try to speak Spanish?
Yeah, they do. No, they do. And puedo hablar español.
Bullies.
No, es que sí hablo español, pero hay veces que it's Spanglish. You just don't use it every day, and so you do start to forget it, or it just doesn't sound the way it's supposed to, or even just slang. Like nobody goes around talking properly. But if I go to Mexico, I just can't keep up with the slang. I just can't keep up with like the way things are said or like the mannerism, things like that. And so when I go to Mexico, a lot of my family doesn't see me as Mexican, and they're like, no, like you're American. But then I think here sometimes I still feel like I'm I'm assimilating to American
And it's something that you're not fully American either. No?
Yeah, because I remember
Yeah.
explaining to my parents Thanksgiving and telling them like I want to do Thanksgiving, and they were like,
Pues, ¿qué es eso?
yeah, they're like, what is that? And so I remember I like came home with like books and resources and like little turkey, little finger turkey.
So you had to introduce Thanksgiving to your parents?
and telling them like I want to do Thanksgiving, and they were like, okay. I love my parents, I really do, because I do see the effort, I do see them trying, and they're like, okay, like, and I remember my mom calling my aunt, like, yeah, like, Val wants to do this American tradition.
I never had that conversation with my dad,
like she wants to do Thanksgiving, so we're gonna make turkey and mashed potato, and I remember, like, looking up, like, what is on the table, like, you know, the cranberry, and the mash, and the gravy,
That's
and
wild.
the turkey. And telling them like I want to experience this, and then we did it.
Wait,
like,
how old were you when you had to do that?
Like 9 or 10. I was in elementary school, and then in middle
So
school.
you had to teach your parents about Thanksgiving?
Yeah, and so then like right around like middle school, I was in like my rebel era, and I was like, fuck this.
Wait, but didn't your mom do Thanksgiving and she was already born in the U.S.?
No, my mom's from Mexico. My dad was born in El Paso, and my dad has more of like the American side, but my mom is like Mexican.
So
like,
dad didn't know about Thanksgiving?
No,
either?
he did, but he was not like
he didn't really do it?
give a fuck about Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. See, because as far as I can remember, we always did Thanksgiving with like my tío Beto and us.
Yeah, so because of my cousins, like it was assimilation became a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But I remember explaining to them like, oh, the pilgrims, and they broke bread, and they're like, okay.
The only reason I knew that was because of high school. Like we usually just ate turkey. Like we didn't really like care about like what was the reason for Thanksgiving. We just did it.
I cared a lot. I cared a lot. So yeah,
That's hilarious.
Or like 4th of July, like I love 4th of July, but they were like whatever, like it's fine. But then 15 de septiembre, 16 de septiembre, like we would go all out, and then I would tell my friends like, yeah, it was Mexico Independence Day, and they're like, okay.
So
cool.
were your parents really passionate about like soccer?
My parents were. Yeah.
So like did they like ever like have like a team that they went for that was from Mexico?
See, it was like Chivas y Cruz Azul, like they like the FA team.
Okay, yeah, because they were passionate about those things that you mentioned, like school, but they were also very passionate about soccer.
They were very passionate about soccer.
I remember my dad, like we would never miss a World Cup.
Oh yeah.
We would never miss a World Cup. Like we watched, like I'm pretty sure we watched a lot of World Cups. I don't remember which ones they were, but he was. And then also, so he likes a team from Mexico. They're from Monterrey. So there's two teams from Monterrey. One is called Monterrey, and then the other is called Tigres.
Okay.
So my dad, he goes for Tigres because he actually sold chicles in the stadium there. So that's the reason why he likes that team. And also my uncle likes Monterrey because I think a lot of their cousins lived in Monterrey, so and they have like a big rivalry. It's like they call it el clásico, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know, but in Barcelona there's the Barcelona and Real Madrid clásico.
Yeah.
So Tigres and Monterrey is like kind of like another big clásico in Mexico.
Okay.
So they were like really passionate about it. They both know a lot of soccer, so they like Real Madrid. So. So that was a little bit about their passion, and then us growing up, my brother and I, we had to go for Tigres, but then we kind of like, we kind of rebelled against my dad, and we're like, we're gonna go for this teams now.
Yeah.
But we always have Tigres in our hearts, you know. So like, if they win a championship, we were like, if they make it to a final, we always gotta support Tigres, like if they're there. So that was a little bit on the soccer side and passion we have for it.
You said something about your dad selling chicles, which means gum.
Yeah.
I don't know how old your dad was, but in Mexico, there were often child labor laws were not respected. And so when I lived in Mexico, I remember seeing a lot of children work and sell gum, or candy, or wash windows, or whatever it may be. But I remember seeing that, and I just remember experiencing like both Mexico and the U.S. and seeing the differences, and like not seeing kids working out at the park. Because that's usually where the kids would sell gum, was like where there's other kids or moms or families. Like, oh, here we're selling gum, we're selling this. I think it's a little different because like you see like American kids like, oh, my lemonade stand, or like we're selling like fundraising or like Girl Scout cookies. But remember, children in Mexico doing it out of a place of like survival. Like this is going towards like the household income. And so I remember like that vivid difference, and you're like, oh my gosh, like just like the reality check of like, oh man. And just knowing that regardless of where I've been, whether it was like in Mexico or or the States, like the privilege, because I never worked like as a child. But funny enough, when I got to the States, I do remember working as a child. Like I remember one time helping my mom's friend lift tile. Like I was in elementary school and I was going to a sleepover, and my friend told me, yeah, like tomorrow we're gonna wake up early and we're gonna go to work. And I was like, what do you mean we're gonna go to work? Like my little like bougie ass. I'm like, what do you mean we're working? And she's like, yeah, like we're gonna go do tile. And I remember like having to lift the old tile and like it chipping, and like whenever it would chip, like it would cut you sometimes, like in your arms, or like it would cut your fingernails. And I was like, oh fuck. I was like, I'm going to college. Like I can't. I was like, I can't. Like that was the moment I was like, my parents are onto something. Like I think I do need to go to college. And then I did, and now I have my degree. And now I'm like, okay, we're gonna reroute. And, we're gonna use my degree, but just not the way that it's intended.
And I think it's funny because the one time when I was like, you know what, I gotta be good in college because I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, was whenever one of the worst jobs for me in farm work was planting the watermelons.
Oh, okay.
So basically, you have a tractor in front of you, and then you have like it's like a device in the back that has a seat. So like every time the tractor is moving, that there's like a little. It's like a little squirt thing that you put the plant in, and it plants it down in the soil, right? So it doesn't plant it really good. So there's people down below that have to put dirt in it so it can stay.
Okay.
But the tractor is going like it's not going fast, but like you have to stick behind it because then you'll get left behind. And so my very first time, I was like, okay, you know, I got this better. So when I got to work, I could not sit down for the life of me.
Yeah.
I could not use the restroom. Like I was like I literally had to like just like sitting down and even getting up. Like I was like, I could not get up the next day because it was like just like your whole body just doing it in like hot sun, just pounding on you. So then that was the day when I was like, oh, I better finish college because I was like, I'm not doing this. Yeah, because I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. And there's people that do it for like 30 years working in the fields. There's people that I've met out in the fields that they've been there for like 25 years. Working in the fields, just always doing that forever, you know. So that's what they know, you know, and I'm kind of glad that I broke out of that cycle because now I kind of get to go back and help them out and show them, hey, you know, there's other ways that you can, you know, advance in this country, you know, not just working here.
Not just hard work.
Not just farm work. You know, farm work is good because
it's good. You
learn to appreciate things, you know.
Yeah, food, where it comes from, the people. I love it. I believe that. Yeah,
and it's also another experience because you're like wow, this is what it took to, you know, all that energy to like that it takes to make food, you know, and grow and everything. Like you really just become a little bit more appreciative about those things, and I'm happy to see people still working in the farm work and the agriculture business, but you know, we need to kind of like appreciate them a little bit more, you know, and the conditions that some of them still are and some of them still go through, and I feel like that's kind of what I get to do, is kind of like do a little bit, you know, about it, not just informing them about just basic things like education stuff, you know, and there's programs out there that can support them in getting an education, because a lot of things that a lot of discussion that we've been having is basically education, and that's a lot. It's important, and if education teaches you to communicate, and communication is really important.
Yeah, I think that's somewhere where our generation is stepping up. It's definitely getting that education, breaking those generational traumas, whatever those may be for that family, and just educating, lifting each other up.
And another thing that I've learned about our culture is that we kind of we fear a lot of things. Have you noticed that we fear a lot of things?
Yeah, like there's a lot of like storytelling, like El Cucuy, La Llorona, like a lot of spooky, like scary, like bad juju, like.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of holds us back a little bit because a lot of like I see my dad and a lot of his struggle is like not wanting to do it because of the fear that he has, you know, like to like go and talk to the front desk lady, you know, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with like communication, because he's like, oh, Miko, do it for me, you know, but I look at me or
there's a lot of codependency between like the child and the parent, where like, I don't know if you've ever felt like you had a parent, your parents, but I felt that, and then I was left like, well, who parents me? Like, no, and like really at the end of the day, feeling alone, like, but who looks out for me? Like, yeah, you provide a roof over my head, and yeah, you love me, and you know, you feed me, but emotionally, like, there's very little to no support.
Yeah, I see that a lot, because you got a point, because we were parenting our parents, but I like that. Who was parenting us?
Yeah. That's